Do you ever walk into a room and feel like all eyes are on you? Or do you ever feel so anxious and nervous that even a simple conversation feels unbearably awkward? Or do you maybe skip out of certain social events because just the thought of them makes your heart race like crazy? Well, same here. That was my reality for years. And in this video, I'll share the scientifically proven to be effective technique that helped me overcome my social anxiety disorder completely. And don't worry, it's not going to be your regular pep talk of, okay, you got to go and face your fears. And it's also not about changing your thoughts and focusing outwardly and practicing social conversations and being mindful. While these things can be helpful, when I initially tried them, they didn't bring me any results. Well, facing my fears did bring me results, but the confidence that I got was temporary. So it didn't work for me. And perhaps that was because my social anxiety was really bad. It would start in the morning with feeling dread about who I might run into taking the bus to work. Because what if I'm going to run into someone and I'm going to get anxious or I'm going to blush and they're going to see it? Then when I would arrive at work, I'd walk in very anxious, feel like everyone's watching me, and I would feel especially uncomfortable on Mondays because then everyone was catching up on what they had done in the weekend and all these cool stories, and I just felt cringing. I didn't want to be part of that. When there was an attractive woman, I would freeze up. And when I was in a social situation, my heart would race. I'd feel all these feelings inside. And all the while, I'm pretending that everything's fine, but I definitely wasn't inside, right? And that I felt that way was like a big secret. And because all of that was going on, I felt inferior to others. I compared myself, I judged myself. I'm like, I'm weaker than them. I'm a loser. I have to prove myself somehow, and I gotta get rid of this somehow. Now, initially, I discovered self-help, and that felt super empowering because I'm like, wow, there's something I can actually do to change all of what I'm experiencing. So I did affirmations and visualizations, and I got into NLP and listened to hypnosis tapes and started facing my fears. And all of that didn't really work. Hypnosis tapes would give me a little bit of relief, but then it went away. After facing my fears was incredibly difficult to do. I did feel more confident, but then that confidence would leak out. So all of that failed, and I kept searching, and then eventually I found this technique. And this technique is called EFT, and it stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. Now, initially I thought it was a scam or something because it sounded way too good to be true. The guy was saying that it had done wonders for his anxiety, that it often works where nothing else works, and that with this technique that he was about to demonstrate, you can actually shift your emotions and your limiting beliefs. And he then went on to demonstrate it, and he started tapping on certain acupressure points on the body. And he said that EFT combines elements of modern psychology with this tapping, and that allows for stuck emotions to process. And I was like, yeah, right. But I was desperate enough to actually do my research. And what I found is that EFT tapping has actually over 100 clinical trials backing it, with 56 being the gold standard of scientific research, randomized controlled trials. And in several studies on both anxiety and PTSD, tapping outperformed other popular therapies like CBT. Tapping brought relief much faster, produced bigger changes, and in 97% of the studies, the results were lasting. So I gave it a try, and I learned the basics, and I tapped along with these videos, but nothing seemed to happen. So I went to like an EFT forum and asked like, hey, is this the real deal? Now, lots of people commenting on it saying that it changed their lives and their anxiety got so much better, or they overcame PTSD, or they're no longer feeling that they're not good enough, or they overcame public speaking phobias. Amazing. And they encouraged me to keep going and keep learning and get help. So that's what I eventually did. When I was back in the Netherlands, where I'm originally from, I contacted an EFT practitioner, and he told me, you know what, just come to a live workshop and we'll see how it works for you. So I go to the guy's workshop and he teaches us about EFT, and then it's time to go practice. I'm in a group with 2 other women, and I'm the practitioner first, and the lady tells me she has a fear of like 6 or 7 out of 10, and we start applying the tapping and doing the technique, and 5 minutes later, she no longer has any fear. Like amazing. But then when it was my turn to be the client, they couldn't get anywhere with me. So they called in the workshop leader. Now this guy started asking me a bunch of personal questions, and soon he had me confess in front of these two other women that I didn't have a girlfriend and something around sex, something that made me feel incredibly ashamed, and I started blushing right in front of them. And as he saw that, he's like, start doing the tapping now. And then as I started doing the tapping, all of that shame and blushing and embarrassment that got triggered started to dissolve. I mean, hard to believe, but it was like a plug was pulled and it just started to drain out. And within a couple of minutes of tapping, I felt completely calm and at ease, and there was no shame or embarrassment anymore. And I could now say the same thing. I don't have a girlfriend. And there was no emotional response whatsoever. And instead, inside, I felt calm and I felt some kind of like compassion for myself and just at ease. Amazing. Now, that shift felt more profound than any of the self-help I had ever done. And that shift that I experienced in working with the practitioner gave me a little boost in self-esteem that was lasting. But it definitely didn't resolve my social anxiety. That took a lot more time, especially because at the time, nobody was teaching how to use tapping to overcome social anxiety. So I had to learn it. But at least I felt incredibly hopeful because I finally had discovered something that worked. It was undeniable. I had felt it myself. So I'm like, I just got to learn how to do this, and then I can figure it out. And then, eventually that is what I used, along with the help of some brilliant practitioners, to overcome my social anxiety completely. And how to use it specifically, I'll talk more about in upcoming videos. But in this video, I just want to share my excitement about this technique because I believe it's the ultimate social confidence hack. And I believe that for three main reasons. Reason number one, tapping brings immediate relief. When you apply it in the right way, you literally feel your shame, insecurity, fear, and other bad feelings decreasing while you're doing the tapping. Reason number two, tapping is easy to do. Now, you don't have to force yourself to awkwardly face your fears on a consistent basis. Instead, just like I'm sitting here on this comfortable couch right now, you could be sitting in your comfortable couch, you imagine particular people and circumstances that trigger anxiety in you, and you apply this technique to completely neutralize your emotional responses. Reason number three, tapping is highly effective. Reduction in social anxiety is often observed in just one session. Now, that's not for everyone, but it is possible. Most people, when they start applying the tapping, experience reduction in their social anxiety in just a few weeks. And the results are lasting. So you don't have to endlessly go and force yourself to face your fears. Once a fear is cleared properly, it's gone completely. And with tapping, you can actually overcome your social anxiety completely, where there is none of it. And instead, you just feel calm and at ease. Now, this goes counter to mainstream belief, but mainstream belief is based on CBT, and this is EFT. And so that's different because with tapping, we actually look for the root causes of the social anxiety symptoms, and we neutralize the root causes as well as the symptoms.
I'm really giving myself a hard time about how incapable I was, how useless I was, how I wouldn't fit in, and forcing myself to try to join in and try to be in situations that were just so uncomfortable for me, and then coming home and all of the beating myself up about it and going into like pits of despair about how I just couldn't, how I was just like stuck in this scenario.
I started blushing, and then somebody laughed at me. Then it gradually got worse and worse, and it was shameful at that time because I'm a man. Man has to be a man.
And I'll still go through the like the shame radar afterwards, but it's not as intense as it was. And if there is something, it doesn't last as long as it used to. Tap it away. I can look it in the face and let it go.
And did a lot of tapping with that, all the childhood baggage thing. And then I also got the habit at that time when I went to work in the morning, I was a bit anxious, and every morning I would do some tapping.
I'm actually enjoying being in groups for the first time in forever. because I don't feel that I've got to prove to myself that I've got something to contribute by speaking. And if something comes up, I'll say it.
I'm rarely anxious anymore. I can even start conversations nowadays. Being anxious makes you tired afterwards. I have much more energy nowadays.
Now, tapping is super powerful, but there's also some realism that needs to be communicated here. So it's unlikely that you're going to resolve long-standing social anxiety with a bit of tapping overnight. It's just very unlikely. It's not going to happen. The fastest I've seen is 3 sessions. However, when you learn how to do this, and it's not difficult to learn, and you actually start applying it, and you might need to get some outside help as well, you can actually get relief quite quickly. And when you persistently apply it, you can overcome your social anxiety completely. Just imagine actually being in a social situation, and instead of feeling self-conscious and nervous and tense, you actually feel normal. You just feel relaxed, you feel calm, you can contribute to the conversation, you're connecting with people, and that connection feels good, and you actually look forward to connecting with other people. You know, this is really possible. Now, I've been coaching people to overcome their social anxiety using tapping since 2009, and I in fact created my first EFT Tapping for Social Anxiety YouTube video in 2009. And so I've heard lots of objections about why people believe they can't beat their social anxiety, such as, well, I tried tapping, but it didn't work for me. Or I felt some relief when I did the tapping, but my social anxiety doesn't change. Or this is just who I am. Can't get rid of social anxiety. I'm a tough case. And I really want you to get results with tapping, so let me address these now. So first of all, when people say, well, I've tried EFT tapping and it doesn't work for me, what I find out that often what they mean is like, I tried it is like, well, I followed along with a tapping video and I didn't get any results. Or I tried the basics and I didn't feel anything change. Or worse, they did some positive affirmations while they tapped on their face. That's not EFT. So while it is true that a lot of people get relief with just the basics alone, for most people with significant social anxiety, it's going to require a lot more than just the basics alone. Tapping works when you do it properly, when you aim at the right kind of targets, and when you do enough of it. And if it didn't work for you, you might not have enough skill and you may need some outside assistance. Now, when you did get relief, you actually felt your emotions shift, but your social anxiety didn't change. One of the key reasons for that is because you're dealing with psychological blocks to transformation. This is very well known in regular psychology world, and you can move past that using the tapping in a particular way. Once you do, once those blocks are gone, you'll begin to notice that your social anxiety begins to lift too. Finally, most people believe they can't overcome their social anxiety because it's just such a severe issue in their life. They wake up with it, they're thinking about it, they're worrying about getting anxious, being seen anxious, the anxiety never going away, and it just consumes their thinking, and it's linked to so many different people and circumstances. And on top of that, they've often been told, okay, you should just try this technique and this approach and that should work. And then they tried it and it didn't work, or it didn't give them any lasting results. Well, that then can cause you to go, okay, I must be a tough case, or I'm a hopeless case, or nothing works for me. Maybe there's just something wrong with me. On top of that, a lot of people have been suffering from social anxiety for as long as they can remember, since early childhood. Well, when that's the case, social anxiety feels as normal to you as the fact that you have blonde hair or blue eyes. You know, it just feels like, well, this is part of me. This is who I am. But it is actually not who you are. Nobody's born with a social anxiety disorder. There are no socially anxious babies. It is something that you've learned. You know, it's a condition that is learned. And anxiety in social situations is the result of a perception of threat. Your brain perceives some kind of a threat, the threat of rejection or the threat of ridicule or whatever it may be. And it activates the fight, flight, freeze response. And that is like in order to fight the danger that it perceives run from it as fast as you can, or freeze if you can't do either. And so the problem really is the perception of threat. The beauty about tapping is that you can aim at that perception of threat and literally rewire the brain so that that perception of threat is no longer there. Now, while this might be hard to believe that this is really for real, you can actually do this. And it will take time, effort, energy in order to learn about the tapping, learn about your inner psychology, learn about those blocks that stop you from making progress, and then actually apply the tapping to this perception of threat. But when you do all of this, and it's not rocket science, then you can actually chip away at the layers of your social anxiety, and your social anxiety will begin to decrease in intensity, frequency, and duration. So for most people, the first thing that they notice is that the intensity is less strong. So you're around a bunch of strangers, and where you normally feel 8 out of 10 anxiety, now you only feel 4 out of 10 anxiety. Typically, people start to notice that they don't beat themselves up as mercilessly anymore after a poor social event. So the beating up, instead of it being 10 hours, it's 10 minutes. That starts to get less. Then the social anxiety symptoms that get triggered, instead of staying there the whole evening for like 4 hours, they're gone in 40 minutes, and then 30 minutes, and then 10 minutes, and then 5 minutes, and so on. That begins to improve. And eventually, you'll get to a place where you have your first time that there's no anxiety in a situation where you normally feel anxious. And that's really cool, because then you go like, where is it? I don't feel it. And you, in the beginning, kind of start to look for it, but it won't come. That is amazing. And that will start to eventually happen more and more. So as you keep doing the tapping, the intensity starts to decrease, how long it stays around starts to decrease, and more often you'll find yourself not getting triggered where you formerly did. And also your ease with yourself, your calm, your self-confidence, your self-acceptance, that all begins to improve, because with the tapping, you're actually addressing the deeper underlying stuff that's causing the anxiety to be there in the first place. Now, I'm sure you might still be skeptical if this is the first time you hear about EFT, but I encourage you to go check out my video testimonials that you can see in one of the playlists on my channel. And you'll find interviews there with people that were skeptical, tough cases that tried everything and nothing worked. And we talk about how they experienced their social anxiety, what they experienced when they started applying the tapping, and how their life is now. This is incredibly inspiring, and I think that will really help you feel more hopeful that this is really the real deal. Now, the truth is that it requires a bunch of learning in order to figure out how to apply the tapping effectively, but it's not hard. And I'd like to help you with that, and here's how I can help you. I've created a free mini course called The 7 Secrets to Social Confidence. And in it, I'll teach you how to use tapping to overcome social anxiety completely. And I'll actually guide you through specific tapping routines to gain relief quickly. So go get it by going to bit.ly/social confidence now.